Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I guess it's still afternoon, not quite evening. Yeah, I know you just got my intro, but again, my name's James. I am a senior assistant director at the Career Center here on the U of I campus. How many of you have been to see the Career Center before? If you have, maybe give me like a thumbs up react in Zoom here. Maybe done a resume review, attended one of our workshops or anything. Anybody? Okay. Not quite everybody, it seems like, but that's okay. If you haven't been to see us, consider this your official invitation. Come see us anytime. Let us know what we can do to help. We're pretty easy to get to, very, close to the heart of campus. If you can find the alma mater statue, you can find us because we are literally right across the street, also in the same building as the financial aid office, if that helps anybody. But yes, we are going to be talking about resumes today. So give me one moment here and I get the presentation pulled up. And we will take a look at it together here. So, oh. All right, so hopefully everybody can see the slides here. I guess I should say as we're going through, since we got a manageable amount of people here today. If you have questions, like absolutely jump in and ask those. Nothing wrong with that. I can promise that I am 100% interruptible at any time. There's some good info in the slides, but you may have your own questions that you want to ask, and we certainly want to answer those as well regarding resumes. So jump in either in the chat or you can unmute yourself, use your mic. Honestly, either way is fine by me. So as we're talking about this broad concept, this idea of resumes, I'll kind of start with this thought. The resume is a document. Maybe some of us are very familiar with them, have applied to many jobs. Maybe some of us are a little newer to writing them, and that's okay too. But to get your wheels turning just a little bit here, I'll kind of pose this question. Why are resumes important? What's the purpose of them? So think on that. And if you want to share your thoughts, maybe try to type those in the chat here, because I'm curious what you all think. There's maybe a couple answers I'm looking for, maybe a couple that I'm hoping we won't hear, but I'll give you a second. Go ahead, put your thoughts in the chat there for us. Or if you want to share them verbally, I guess you can unmute as well. That's okay too. But what do we think? What's the importance of a document like a resume? Why do we spend so much time thinking about them, sometimes freaking out about them? Why does James from the Career Center come talk to us about these things? Any thoughts from folks? Yeah, summarizes professional and research information about you. Yeah, I like that. I think summarize is a good word. We could list every single thing that we've ever done, but that would be just pages and pages sometimes. So sometimes we do need to kind of pick and choose a little bit. So I like that word. But yeah, absolutely. I also like the idea of multiple focuses. Could be for traditional, for lack of a better term, work positions, could be for like a research route or something like that. Maybe you're going into academia or something. Yeah. What about other folks? What do we think? Other thoughts here? Yeah, information about the person. Content depends on the place requesting the resume. Yeah, so kind of the same thought there. Again, could be for work, could be for school. Maybe some of you submitted resumes for your college application for scholarships. Yeah, so definitely it's something we can tailor, something that we can, adapt based on the context, 100%. Yeah, these are all good thoughts. And honestly, they're all correct. I think everything that we've seen so far is looking pretty good. Now, what I'm glad we didn't hear is one of these two statements that you can see here, right? Your resume is just your work history, right? For some students, that's going to be a pretty significant component of it, but I hope we're thinking beyond that. Again, especially like knowing the audience here, you all have this in common that you probably got like some volunteer-based experience. Like, does that belong on your resume? The short answer is yes. Like, you probably did some very cool things. You accomplished goals, you developed or grew or gained knowledge. So sometimes we box in just a little bit too strictly. It's like, oh, it has to be just a certain type of experience. So I'm glad nobody said that. I'm also glad nobody said this, is it just something to get me a job? Usually that is the first answer I get when I ask this question for students. I hope we're thinking about it in a little bit more of a nuanced way. Again, it's a chance to show skills. It's a chance to do some things kind of on an implicit level, right? There's this very explicit component of, here's a job I did, here's a task I completed, but we're also conveying, different skills, different things about ourselves, our attention to detail, our communication ability, all these different things. So Yeah, again, this is kind of just what we were saying here. I hope that we're not limiting to, only there's only this certain type of experience that we can put on the resume, or that we're missing out again on some of that nuance with, some of the other things that we're conveying. So hopefully we'll keep this in mind as we go through the content today. Basically what we're going to do is, if you can actually, just visualize the resume itself, either on the sheet of paper or on a computer screen or whatever, your word processor, basically we're just going to work our way through section by section. We'll kind of start at the top, go on, work our way down, and we'll share, some different thoughts, some ideas in terms of content, in terms of format and whatnot. So that's kind of how we'll approach this today. And again, ask questions as we're going through. Absolutely feel encouraged to do that. So if I see your resume for the first time, first thing I'm going to see is probably you, probably your name, maybe some contact information that's in there. So just a couple notes with this, with the document overall, there is, an ability, a capacity to use the formatting to our advantage, right? The whole thing is just like this single uniform font where everything kind of bleeds together and blends together. I don't know that that's the best approach, right? Because it makes it a little bit tougher to read. Again, formatting can be used to your advantage. Now you can definitely over format, we want to be aware of that. But this is an example, if your name is a little bigger, a little bolder, that's absolutely okay to do. Just one example of many, of course. In terms of your contact information, probably nothing too surprising here, right? We would say it is a good idea to include phone number, email. Address is okay. I feel like it's less essential. I feel like the norm for resumes has changed a little bit, where this used to be like more of a formality kind of component, but I think a lot of folks are a little bit more open to, maybe I'm just listing like my geographic location, like city, state or something, rather than like the full street address. Although you could include it. Again, maybe your style is like, I want to be business professional and formal, you could absolutely do that. I will say this with, like students, I get this question a lot, like current versus permanent address. Do I list my campus one, my home one? If you're listing address info, I would say, honestly, take your pick, but you don't need both. Really, that's not adding that much more info that's memorable, that's useful. So just one address is okay. I will throw that comment out there. Yeah, Olivia, I see you in the chat asking about LinkedIn. So you'll see it in there on the example, right? There may be other similar types of information. Maybe it is different web presences. Maybe I have a GitHub, a LinkedIn profile. Maybe I have a portfolio if I'm in one of the more creative kind of career paths, right? So I would say with LinkedIn, like, is it the most essential thing on your resume? I don't think it's like this magic cure-all. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a tool to use. It's frankly a very ubiquitous tool. LinkedIn is just like a monolith, right? Every industry out there uses LinkedIn in some way. So I think it's good. I think if you don't have a profile, can you still get hired? Like, yes, you can. But like, why would you not use tools at your disposal is kind of my question. So honestly, everything we're talking about today, if it looks good on your resume, like it'll look good on your LinkedIn profile as well. So if maybe you're trying to build out that profile, all the strategies we'll talk about today, again, very applicable to LinkedIn too. So there's a thought for it. And then, I see question. Yeah, picture. I don't know that a picture is so necessary. I should specify for like in the States, for the United States. It's not really a kind of a standardized component. Now that may be different in other countries. So it's a little bit of an asterisk, but assuming you're applying domestically here, picture is not required, not standard. Same thing goes for birthday. Again, not really an American style. Fonts, I think like you just don't need to overthink it. There's no like a magic bullet, like, oh, this is the font that will, kind of get your resume in the door. So, honestly, you see what it like the Times New Roman, the Arial, Calibri, I think is those are kind of the standard ones. So like you just don't overthink it is really what I would say. Any of those are probably professional looking. So something like that. But yeah, I love these good questions. Keep them coming in. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say here is like with your email address, like keep it like something nice and professional sounding. So like, it's super easy to set up like just a free, first name, last name at Gmail. Your U of I email address is also great. It's probably centered around your name in some way, maybe some numbers in there. So that's a good choice as well. And it's a little bit more distinct. Not everybody has a U of I email address. So absolutely feel free to use your one here from campus as well. So hopefully this is all pretty straightforward. Moving into some more of the meaty components here. So we would say for an audience like this, student audience, education section, not that this is carved in stone as an absolute for every situation, but for a lot of us, like, this is probably a good way to open the resume. Some reasoning for that would be because like, this is what you're doing now, so it's pretty current, right? It's also probably relevant to the jobs you're applying for, because it's a decent assumption that they may be related to the major you're studying in some way, right? So it's a good way to start your resume for now, until you get like some more years of industry experience, for example. Now, we would say for the education section, avoid, I think is probably the right term there, things from high school. I'm not saying like there's never a time and place for it. Like maybe there's students who were involved in like clubs in high school that were super related to their major they have now, for example. Like that certainly could be. But overall, I hope we're just kind of phasing this out over time. U of I is a big school. There's a lot going on, so a lot of opportunities. Hopefully, we're taking advantage of those. So again, phase it out over time. If all you're listening is, yeah, here's the school I attended, here's my diploma date, like, I think we could probably use the space, the page space in some better ways. So just something to think about. Now, this goes for the document overall, but this is a good example of it, right? Remember, it is a formal document, a professional document. So we want to keep that in mind with the language, right? So this comes into play, for example, with like when we're writing out the name of the school we attended, the name of the major we have here at the school. So, I really think that the best advice is like, keep it nice and formal, just write it all out. University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign is probably your best bet, right? Now, if I'm applying like for a job in my, dining hall and I write U of I, like, yeah, I can probably put that together. But, maybe I'm applying for a summer internship and let's say it's over in Iowa, right? Well, U of I means something very different all of a sudden. So it's almost a specificity thing in addition to formality, right? Even University of Illinois, well, there is UI Springfield, there is UI Chicago. I am a little biased because I do have 2 degrees from this campus. I happen to think we're the best of the 3 in the U of I system. But like, honestly, this is a good school. Lots of well-regarded programs. You can be proud of the fact that you're here. So again, just go ahead, spell it all out. Again, same thing goes for the degree. Like my undergrad degree from here was in psychology, for example. So I don't write, BS Psych, a little informal. Bachelor of Science in Psychology, probably your best bet here, right? Same thing would go for other, like if I have a minor, if I attended another school that I'm also listing, like same concept applies, of course. We would say that GPA is considered optional, technically, for the resume. So like, honestly, the way I pose it to my students is just like, are you proud of this? Do you think it reflects well on you? If that answer for you personally is yes, I would say go ahead and put it on there. If that answer is, I'm not quite so sure, you can leave it off. I think, what was the number? I can't quite remember, but earlier this week, I actually saw like some numbers from a recruiter that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, and it was looking at like what was the percentage of recruiters that like screen based off GPA, and it was super low. It's been decreasing, like, frankly, year by year. So this is something where, again, it sweetens the deal if you've got a good GPA. But I'll be honest with you, my undergrad here at U of I had some academic struggles. I have left my GPA off my resume and I've never been called out on it in an interview or anything. So you do have a personal choice with this, and it's something you can change, right? Maybe it's a little low now, but a semester later, a year later, we get it a little higher. We can go ahead and slide it back on the resume. No worries there. But yeah, so that's kind of what we would say with the education section. If you got questions on that, continue to ask them, as we move ahead here. But remember what we said a moment ago, right? Your resume is not just that work history. Again, knowing this audience, people who have like volunteer experience, right? This is especially pertinent to you all because we define what goes on the resume too strictly sometimes. It has to be permanent, full-time, paid work in my field. Otherwise, I can't put it on my resume. I disagree with that. There are definitely some worthwhile things that we've done. Again, maybe it is like my volunteer experience. Maybe it's, don't be hesitant to talk about these on your resume, because, we probably did some cool things, built some skills, accomplished some goals, gained some knowledge, right? That's what we want to highlight. And that's where we can pull it. Again, a lot of times out of these things where it's like, well, it doesn't check every one of those boxes. Like, that's absolutely okay, right? And there's also some flexibility with, you know, how do we organize what we're talking about on the resume? So again, an audience like this, there's a couple of things. Like if you feel like, yeah, I have like just a lot of that more volunteer-based experience, not as much like formal work, that's okay. A couple things we could do. We could categorize by, you know, like the type of work. Like here is my work experience. Here's my volunteer experience. My campus activities. But another alternative would be like, hey, maybe I've got a little bit of work experience in my field, but yeah, more of my stuff that is related to my major, to my future career path is volunteer-based. We could actually kind of sandwich those together as well. So we could say like, here's my experience in whatever that subject area is. And maybe it's a combination of paid experience and volunteer. Like that's okay, it's another option. So you've got some flexibility with this. I'd encourage you to give it some thought, like what is the best fit for the things that you individually have done, because that's going to be different for every person, obviously. So just again, some food for thought with regards to that. Now, regardless of what type of experience we're talking about, these would be some things that we would want to include, right? Some things to be thinking about. We said a moment ago, like again, education section, pretty good way to start the resume, not always carved in stone. I think that and again, the knee jerk a lot of times with students is like, even if I am doing education first, like again, yeah, go straight into my work history, because that's what you write about on a resume. But yeah, again, maybe we have like, oh yeah, I had some part-time jobs, like I was just paying my apartment rent though, like, but oh, again, maybe it's volunteer-based, maybe it's these RSOs on campus, and these are like legitimately related to my future career path and to my major. Like we could absolutely lead with those sections. The key word there you see is relevant, right? Kind of a vocabulary word for the evening almost. Relevance, you know, we want to lead with the sections that are going to be more relevant, right? Because we do want to kind of top load the resume just a little bit, because the things that I read first are going to be more salient. I'm going to recognize them, remember them, absorb them just a little bit better. So we want to lead with the most relevant content in terms of the order we put things in here. Now, within each section, so we just talked about order of section. Within each section, this is just some standard resume format stuff. Reverse chronological order, again, regardless of field, industry, this is probably going to be your standard. So we start with what's ongoing or most recent, and then we're working our way backwards through time. And then the type of information we would include, but probably nothing too surprising here. You know, the name of the organization, you know, name of the position, preferably the formal name of the title. You know, when did you work there? I would say for dates, like month and year, good level of detail. I will see some students do just year, or they'll do season, like you know, summer 2020 to whatever. To me, it's a little imprecise. Month and year is good. That is what I would recommend. And then location information is good as well. You know, we may be working for organizations that are all over the country, maybe all over the world, and in fact, even. So specificity is good. Now, when we're listing these out, again, we talked about this briefly, like using the formatting to your advantage. You're absolutely encouraged to do that. And there is a purpose to this. So the example here, like maybe we are bolding the name of the company. Well, like almost subconsciously, like as I'm reading your resume, I'm like, my brain's going to pick up on that implicitly, right? Okay, bolded information is telling me this type of information. Maybe the title of the position is italicized. Well, again, before I actually read it, my brain is primed to understand it and comprehend it a little bit better. So again, there is a reason to this. Now, you could do it however you want. We could flip that around. We could say, I'm going to italicize the company name, bold the position name. That's okay too. Consistency is going to be the main thing. Pick a style, stick with it throughout the whole document. Because that's going to be visually cleaner. And again, it's going to just help like the reader absorb what they're reading just a little bit better. So this is good because I mean, you know, I hope I'm not bursting anybody's bubble here. But, you know, the first time someone looks at your resume, like I hate to break it to you, they're probably not reading word by word every single little thing. It probably is a quicker scan, right? So you want to make it easier to read for that person, right? Yeah, talking about the task you did. Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that. Yeah, thank you for that comment. That is coming up very, very shortly here. So when we are doing that, when we are writing out these descriptions, because we do want to describe what we did. And again, similar thought to before, because I've seen students who will write out like descriptions for their work history, but then like, again, these other activities, they just give me the name. It's like, no, you can talk through the details of those as well. Again, even if they're not like, again, like formal work in my field or whatever. You know, again, let's think more about the significance of what I did rather than just like the task itself. So we would recommend a bullet point format versus like a paragraphic bullet, just a little bit more of an efficient way to communicate information. So again, similar idea, making it easy for the person to read and to absorb the information, right? So bullet point is recommended. Now, if you are composing a bullet, like if maybe you're newer to writing resumes or it's an experience that you haven't written about before, if you're updating your resume, honestly, like as basic as it sounds, honestly, like those W questions, who, what, where, etc. I think this is a good place to start with writing a bullet point, because what most students have no problem with is the what. Here is a task I did. Here is a job duty. But I think that's a little bit insufficient, because we want more detail than that. There's definitely more to be learned than just that. So again, these other things, you know, who did I work with? Or again, if it's volunteer-based, maybe we could go into who was like my audience or my clientele. That could be a component where, you know, what was the setting, when, frequency. If I did this once a day versus once a week versus once a month, like that makes a difference, right? And the why, you know, well, why may be a little bit deeper to think through. But again, for an audience like this, you know, a lot of the times the volunteer experience we have is purpose-driven in some way, right? This is a cause that I have passion for, or something like that. That can be something we can draw on, right? We can also think of why as like purpose, like what was the goal? You know, did we accomplish that goal? That could be something that's something that, you know, hear this all the time when we work with employers here at the Career Center. Like there's things that employers want to know, and one of those is, can you accomplish the goals that you either set for yourself or that other people set for you? So that's kind of that why element, right? And then as well in general, I think, you know, as we're writing out the things that we did, again, going beyond just the what, just the task. I think a good approach is a nice skill-based approach. So you kind of hear, you know, transferable skills, kind of a buzzword, I think. But this is good. So this ties back into, again, maybe I'm doing things that aren't like just like super strictly what we would think of is like formal work. Again, volunteering, perfect example of this, right? Well, this can help us kind of bridge that gap just a little bit. It can help us give a little bit more connective tissue here, because if just the task is a little bit too different, a little bit off the beaten path, a lot of the time the skill we use to complete that task may have more of a connection, right? Because skills are portable, again, transferable. So, you know, if I built this skill in, again, an unpaid context, a volunteer context, that skill I can still use in, again, more of a formalized work setting. So don't be afraid to go into this aspect of it, because it can really help connect those dots just a little bit. So I'm a big advocate of, again, like a nice skill-based focus as we're writing things out. Some other thoughts for these descriptions, these bullet points. Again, some of this is just really kind of standard formatting stuff. Because we're doing more of a bullet point format, these aren't necessarily going to be like these full out sentences and such. So we actually start with the verb in a resume rather than saying I, you know, I helped customers. Well, we could just start with the verb, right? We also don't need to end with the period, because again, it's not like this full out sentence. It's a little bit more efficient in the bullet point. I see this a lot. We don't need to do this either. We don't need to start every bullet with responsible for. Again, the example from a moment ago, like responsible for helping customers, responsible for, we'll just say help the customers. Like it's cutting down this unnecessary language. So I see that a lot when I'm reviewing resumes at my job. Because we are starting with this action verb, we do want to be mindful and make good word choices there. Same idea when we said a minute ago, like we want to front load the resume a little bit because what we read first is more salient. Well, on more of a micro level, it's the same thing here. That first word I read is going to like hopefully engage me for the rest of the bullet. So we want to pick words that are descriptive, that are specific, that are engaging. So a moment ago, I intentionally used this word, helped customers. That is one of my two least favorite words in resumes. Helped could mean just about anything. I don't like it. And worked is even worse. So never lead a bullet with helped or worked. Even just like changing from helped customers to assisted customers. Like same definition, honestly, but just a little bit more engaging, right? And again, we could take it even further with, again, that specificity, that descriptiveness as we're making these word choices. And then another thing, so we talked about a nice skills-based focus. I am also a fan of a results-based focus, an outcomes-based focus. We already talked about this a little bit with, again, that why question. What is the purpose of what we did? Good way to do this, numbers. I'm a big fan of numbers in resumes because they are specific, they are quantifiable, and they lend themselves to discussion of results pretty easily here, right? Again, thinking in a volunteering context, right? Again, that impact, that why, that purpose may be a big part of it. So numbers are a good way to kind of build on this thought even more for volunteer-based experiences. So, we planned this event or this drive or whatever, and we had awesome attendance. Well, you can tell me, like, what was that attendance? If it increased or just like what was the total? Give me a head count or a percentage or something. Like, this is a good level of detail. Here's this task I did. Well, did I do this for, like, what was the size of the audience? You can see the one there, 5 students. Like, if that was 5 or 15 or 50, it makes a difference. The context is very different. Money as well, anytime there's money involved, good opportunity to throw some numbers in there. So we raised this much money, or this was the budget that we worked in. Another good example is budgets. So don't be afraid to work these things in here, right? Okay. Yeah, so kind of continuing on here. So this, like, just kind of put this into practice here a little bit. So maybe we were an RA on campus. It's a somewhat typical campus experience. What did I do as an RA? Well, I made some events and programs. Okay. Worked with other staff members. I mean, at least you told me it was daily, right? I helped residents. So again, you see right here, my 2 words that I do not like: worked and helped. We got them both. So there's probably ways to improve this. Now, remember, we've talked about multiple strategies so far. This might be just a little bit better, right? So even like visually, I think, like, one of these looks more empty and one of these looks more complete, right? So different things here. Like, you'll notice, I think one of the main things I want to highlight here is, like, these strategies stack. Like, it's not just, pick one single strategy for improving your bullet. It's probably a few of these. Again, they made events and programs versus organized, a little bit more kind of functionally oriented, a little bit more engaging. What types of events, the specificity? Well, they were these culturally and diversity related workshops, right? Think back to those W questions. The who is the audience? Freshmen and sophomores. About how many? Throw in some quantifiable numbers, about 50. So again, you can see, like, it's multiple of these, and the same thing goes for these other bullets that are listed here too, right? I don't want to necessarily go through every single one, but, like, you can see this, right? Using multiple strategies, again, engaging verbs, using numbers when you can, being specific about, different details. Again, those W questions are a good way to do that. Bringing in the purpose, help residents could literally mean anything, versus ensuring the safety, working with other people, collaborating versus, adding in, like, to plan programs. This was why we were doing it, right? So it's just, again, some examples, kind of take the concepts we've been talking about and kind of practicalize them just a little bit here for you. Okay. So continuing on, I feel like the bullets are, again, like, kind of the core, like, really that's where we got some meat on the bones of the resume. So that's where I would say you want to put a lot of thought into things. So again, if you got questions on that, definitely continue asking them. Excuse me, tripping over my tongue there. I guess, like, the comment in the chat there I didn't get to, like, how long should they be? I would say probably just a handful of bullets. Like, I would never tell a student, like, here is the number that you can never deviate from. Like, I would never say, list 3 bullets or 2 or whatever for every single experience. Because if you remember what we said a second ago about relevance, right? If I'm listing experiences that are more relevant, I may want to go into more detail. Versus maybe here's one that is it's a little off the beaten path, so to say. Maybe I got, like, 1 or 2 things I want to highlight from this, but I don't need as much detail for that, right? So there is an element of just thinking through that in a fashion where it is going to be different depending on what we're talking about. So being aware of that, but a few bullets per experience. If you can only think of one, I'd say think a little harder, or come to the Career Center. Let us help you think through that. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say in terms of length of those descriptions. So some optional sections, because again, the resume is very, like, personal. It's very individual to your own experiences, your own goals. So it's going to be different for every person. Some things that may be worth considering, like an objective section. Sometimes we'll see this. I think the pitfall with this is like, really just making it things I'm going to read elsewhere in your resume anyway. Here's my objective. I'm a sophomore studying blah, blah, blah. you know, at U of I, and I want to work in blah, blah, blah industry, right? Well, I probably am going to learn those, A, from reading your education section, like have a second leader, and B, from seeing what type of job you're applying to. So think a little bit deeper than this. I think the key is like context, like you give me something that helps set the stage for what I'm about to read. I'll give you one example. I was working with a student recently where they had changed majors halfway through their time here at U of I, and like you could tell in their experience, so like their first half was very much in this field over here, and then the second half of their experience was very much in this other thing. And so what we did is we said, like, hey, let's just be upfront about this. Like, let's provide the context and say, like, hey, not in these exact words, obviously, but like, yeah, I switched majors halfway through, and that's kind of why I've got this division in the types of things that I've done. And it's not like, oh, we were making an excuse. No, it's not that at all. You know, it's just, again, context. It's something that's going to be useful. That's going to enhance everything else that I read as I continue through the document, right? So job objective, I think context is really the purpose of this, and hopefully it's obvious, but probably this goes at the top of the resume, right? If it's buried halfway through or at the end, like you kind of miss the chance, you know, to have the impact that it should have, right? For a student audience, this is somewhat typical, like a coursework section. I think these can be good if they're used in the right way. The pitfall with this, I think, is like it's just a little too all over the place. Like, oh, I want to give a cross section of every single thing I've ever studied, and so it's like, oh, intro to this thing here, intro to this thing way over here, intro to this other thing, and to me, there's nothing like unifying it together. I think what's more effective is let's show like more advanced ability, like maybe I'm choosing some higher level courses, or I'm choosing courses that center around a particular knowledge type or you know, skill type. That's what I think is going to be a little bit more effective. So do think through this a little bit critically. Again, what is it that gives these a little bit more thrust instead of that's just a little bit of everything? I wonder if that's probably not the most effective way to approach a section like this. So food for thought. Again, student audience, sometimes we'll see like in a word section, because like, yeah, maybe I've got like all these cool scholarships or whatever. You know, could be helpful to know. I think what I would say with this, kind of my little pro tip from me to you is, like, what's the significance of these things that I got, right? Like if you say like, yeah, I got the blah, blah, blah scholarship, and like, yeah, cool, good for you, sounds impressive. But I think we can do a better job than that. You know, I got this scholarship for having super high GPA. Obviously, that's not exact wording for a resume, but you get what I'm saying. I got this scholarship because I did just a ton of community service hours. Like, that's helpful to know, because like there's a contextual element to it, right? You know, if you're here at U of I, like we've at least heard these things, you know, James Scholar, you know, and things like that. But that name doesn't carry weight outside of our specific context, right? So what is the significance of why I got this award, this scholarship, or this distinction? Could be worth thinking through. Skills section, yeah, I mean, not just for students. This is pretty typical at any you know, kind of career stage. I feel like it could be relevant. Now with this, what I would say is there's a reason why we talked about kind of those softer skills, you know, the transferable skills. You know, those could be things like leadership, communication, teamwork. There's a reason I talked about those when we were going through like the bulleted descriptions, because that's probably the better place to do those. If you say, okay, here's my laundry list of skills, and again, you say leadership and then whatever, like I kind of have to take your word for it, right? It's like, okay, you know, I guess, you know, you say you're good at this, versus embedding it into your bullet points, because then you're able to say like, here's this skill, you know, and here's this concrete example of when and how I used it and how it turned out. Like it's a show versus tell. We want to show with these skills, because these are somewhat more subjective skills. Now there are skills that are more objective, right? So this could be my technical skill set. This could be, you know, you use Excel. This could be I use Python. This could be other things. This could be like I speak another language. You know, hablando español, falando portugués. All these different things. Like these are a little bit more objective, right? So these are probably okay and more of like just this list out. Now, what I would say is I think this is a nice touch is when you're listing out these more objective skills. Talk about your proficiency level, right? So again, whether it's a spoken language, you know, something more technical, you know, PowerPoint, Word, fill in the blank. So I think that this is showing something implicitly, right? We've said this idea before, like there's things we're conveying implicitly. One of them is our ability to self-assess. So if I say, hey, here's my skills, I'm advanced in this one over here. I'm, intermediate in these couple. I am proficient in this. So those are some word choices we could use. We're showing like, hey, I can identify where my skills lie, right? There's other implicit things that we convey, your attention to detail, your written communication. That's what the document as a whole is. So don't forget about those aspects too. And then this is certainly dependent on the position and on the field. But is there some sort of licensure, some sort of certification that's needed? If there's like a cert, you probably know that based off of the job you're applying to. But if it's relevant, I would say go ahead and put it on the resume, if it's applicable. So that could probably be its own section. Okay. Some formatting things, some of which we've touched on already. Again, I can use, there's a purpose to like using the formatting with like bolding different things or whatever, underlining. We've talked about that. Just the visual of the overall document, I think is worth saying, because like true first impression, even before I read a single word, like this is probably like the true first impression, right? Does this resume look empty? That's probably not great, but sometimes you just look at like, yeah, there's just a lot of blank space here. The flip side is probably also not great. This is just a solid brick of text, and like, dude, I don't even know where the sections start and end here. That's not ideal either, but probably somewhere in the middle, like nice and balanced. Balance is a good word to use here. Is probably what we're shooting for. Proofread, I hope that goes without saying. This is, grammar, spelling, punctuation. This is also, frankly, like when you update your resume over time, like, oh, did I change this? This used to say to present. Did I put the end date on? So whenever you update your resume, this is something to keep an eye out for. And then, excuse me, and then the last bullet point there, templates. Really, at the Career Center, we recommend like probably staying away from them. Now, I do want to say, like I'm not saying, oh, you need to build a 1000% unique resume that's not like any other one that's out there. Well, there are best practices, like we've been talking about them, right? So look to like those templates and such that are out there for inspiration, like completely do that. Like, oh, I like the way that they laid this out or the way they formatted this, like that's great. But we would say like homebrew it, build it yourself, Microsoft Word or whatever you're using, like you can do it. I promise. Anything you see, you can replicate. There's a couple of reasons for this. One would be like, frankly, templates are just a pain sometimes. I want to add a section or I want to move sections around and it's going to fight you or not let you, or like just throw the formatting off in these super weird ways. So that's not great. But then I also want you to think about it from this perspective. If I get your resume and it's like, oh, well, okay, this is the 12th one today that looks exactly like this. Like, is that a great impression, or are you already kind of not standing out? Because I can tell you, reviewing resumes at the Career Center, like if I were to see like in the corner of my room, out the corner of my eye, like a resume that is in the first option in Microsoft Word under resume template, like I can pick it out immediately and I'm already like, I'm not crazy about it. So, again, a couple of reasons we would say templates again, like see what's out there. That's great. Draw inspiration, but maybe some reasons to avoid them, like in terms of the execution here. Some things to maybe stay away from. So don't exaggerate your experiences. I'm going to rephrase that slightly. Please don't lie on your resume. I've worked with some very interesting students over my time at the Career Center. I had one student tell me, oh, well, they're looking for 5 years experience, so I'm just rounding up. No, you can't round up time. That's not a thing. I don't know how many students who say they're bilingual, and then in conversation, they tell me, oh yeah, I had a couple years of Spanish in high school. Like, are you really bilingual? Like these are some things to be like realistic about, right? So don't exaggerate. But honestly, like the flip side is true as well. You don't want to undersell yourself. And I get it. I introvert 100%. Like some people like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm cocky or come across like I'm bragging. Like I empathize with it. But there's probably somewhere in between where we're putting our best foot forward. And really, that's what we're trying to do. So we want to kind of find that sweet spot between the two, I think. Some other things to not do, repetitive language. The couple things I see a lot is like repeating the same action word, right? So here's a job I had, here's a bullet point. I assisted students, and then the next bullet point is I assisted parents of students, and then the next bullet is I assisted these other people over here. Well, we can probably combine those, or we can mix up the verb choices that we're making, a couple different ways that we can do it. We'll also see sometimes like, maybe I worked at Papa John's one summer, next summer I worked at Pizza Hut. It's like, dude, I was doing the same thing. Well, don't just copy paste, like, because that's going to get real disengaging to read real quick, even if the duties were very similar, like they certainly could be. So just be aware of this. And then the next one there, so like making statements negative. Emily, you may want to mute, you're kind of clanking around, I can hear you there. But making statements negative. So, dealt with customers, it sounds a little violent to me almost, I don't know. I reviewed a student's resume once where they had written, like, fix the problems that always seem to come up. Like, I get what you're saying, what you're trying to say. But, like, it's legit. We've all had jobs we didn't like. I'm not saying that that's not legit. But I shouldn't be able to tell it like reading your resume. So keep it positive, keep it professional, and try to avoid that negative language, right? We mentioned high school stuff already. Again, phase it out over time. If you are a freshman, I get it. That's where your experience is going to be. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a senior and all of your stuff was from high school, maybe we want to rethink how we're approaching this, right? Again, I'm going to tie it back to this thought of like, let's think broadly about like the things we've done. Because I see this sometimes where like I'll meet with an upperclassman and they're like, oh yeah, I don't have work history like here on campus. I don't even know what to put. And then we have these conversations where it's like, yeah, you know what, you were in these RSOs, you did this volunteer work, absolutely belongs on your resume. Yeah, so sometimes that helps mitigate this. And then the last bullet point there, so references available on request. Really, this is like an older kind of approach. If you're applying to jobs, internships, like this, they're asking for references typically as separate from the resume, either as their own document or like I'm just typing them into a web form or something. References available on request. Really, this is just taking up space. We could use this to maybe add another bullet or get more descriptive. That's probably a better approach here. So again, some things to maybe stay away from. Real brief, I promise I'm not going to give you the whole commercial for the Career Center here, but I do want to point out that we review resumes. So if you've been thinking about all these things that we've talked about today, feel free to bring your resume by for a review. You can do it a couple different ways. We do have drop-in review hours that are noted on the slide there. You can make an appointment if you want something that's a little bit more like a lengthy sit down, like a full half-hour appointment with our staff. Or you can submit them online for an asynchronous review. So like you would send the file to us, we send the file back with feedback in a couple of business days. So really you've got 3 methods to do resume reviews. We also review things like cover letters, LinkedIn profiles. Certainly you can find the whole suite of our services on our website and such. But since we're talking about resumes today, did just briefly want to mention that like, yeah, this is something we're certainly happy to help you out with. But yeah. That is really what I wanted to talk about today. So I know we went through some of that decently quickly. I recognize that we may have some questions from folks. So I want to give you all the chance. Like, what else is helpful? What do we want to talk more about? Or do you feel like we didn't get as much into? What questions do you have about resumes or about the Career Center as well? So we'll kind of open the floor. Like if you want to unmute, use the mic, that's great. If you want to put it in the chat, that's great too. But we just want to make sure I give you all a second here where you can ask those questions that you've got. So what else is helpful to know about resumes? Kind of give you some time here to stew that over and then let me know what you think. It's okay, take time to think.
Yeah, I would like to thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. I'm a doctoral student here, so one of our classes required like professional dossier thing, and CV is a part of it. So while you were talking, I was just trying to edit my CV as well, because that's really great, having different degrees and then the work. So I want to highlight for my job or school or anyone who will read my CV, just to get to the point. So my question is like, What do you recommend in terms of listing like professional memberships a person will be liable with, and then about the publication, maybe it will be like different type of CV, or it will be like different listings that we need to attach them. And apart from conferences, and then community activities, like how can we actually indicate what kind of extracurricular work we have done before for the society, and if it's applicable to the position that we're applying for. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I heard you bring up like the term CV. So like if you're writing more of a CV format than a resume, like the nice thing is those are much more long form. So like you can absolutely add those other sections that we talked about. So like, again, assuming that that's more of the format that we're going with, don't feel like, oh, I got to limit this to a page or whatever, right? CV is more long form, you know, and if you're applying to, you know, positions that are asking for one, like you can absolutely leverage that. So yeah, all the different sections that you mentioned, you know, conferences and publications and such, I would say just make those their own section. Like we don't need to try to figure out, oh, how do I kind of cram this into those other sections that we talked about? The things I mentioned tonight were more for like a resume format, right? CV, yeah, add those other sections, go right for it. You know, and we don't need to overthink a lot of those like publications, like as long as you're citing it in the right style for your field, like we don't need so much more detail than that. That's going to be a little bit more of like a straightforward, hey, here's just this list, right? You know, same thing could be said for like conferences we've attended or something like that. I think as well, you know, we talked about consistency. I think that's true as well, even as I'm adding these different sections, making sure that the style is consistent. That could even be like, oh, well, I'm listing this conference, but like it was a week long. How do I write like my start and end dates? Well, I would say like do the same, like we said a minute ago, like month and year, good level of detail. Let's say same will go for those shorter experiences too, right? And then, yeah, I think for like where you talked about the community involvement, like I would say that, again, we would probably do it similarly to how we would like, again, kind of like normal, I hate using that word, but like work experiences, you know. So like, again, thinking through it in terms of skills, think through it in terms of, you know, impacts and outcomes, because, you know, those are things that, like, again, that idea of transferability, right? If we've got those from experiences that are very in line with, like, literally these are the tasks I will be doing in the job I'm applying to, like, that's great, but that's not going to happen every single time. Because I think the danger is like, oh, well, if it's just too different, like, again, I'm just going to kind of laundry list these out. But we might be missing like some decent growth opportunities, you know, some opportunities to show off a little bit. So I would say, in some sense, it's like, don't overthink it, but it also is like, yeah, give it the thought that it needs, right? Approach it in a similar way. So I think that's kind of a good approach there. But yeah, hopefully that I know you had a couple aspects to your question. If I missed one of the parts of it, certainly let me know. But yeah, that's good. I like it. Other folks, what other questions do we have here? We'll give you a second. Oh, yeah, see in the chat, make an appointment soon. Yes, please do. Again, my name's James. Come see me if you like. Think I'm weird, come see other folks. It's all good. All the people I work with are absolutely lovely. Yeah, other questions on resumes? Okay, so if you need to jump in under the wire, absolutely do that, but kind of sensing a little bit of a lull here. So I'll just say this, like if you're like me, because I know like anytime like somebody says, okay, like any questions, like I need more time to process and absorb. So if that's you, again, take the time to do that. You may think of questions and ideas after the fact. That's okay. Again, come see us at the Career Center. Let us know what we can do to help. Like I said, we're literally a block away from the quad, easy to get to. So check out our website. You can find all of our services there and such. But just let us know what's helpful. We'll definitely be there to help you out.